I'm Rob Van Raphorst. Welcome to MBA Now. Washington is back in full swing, and as always, there's a lot happening regarding the housing industry. Here to break down what's happening with GSE reform, government funding, program reauthorizations, and much more is MBA's chief lobbyist, Bill Killmer. Bill, thanks for being here.
Hey, Rob. Glad to be here.
I know GSE reform is really on the top of everybody's mind as of late. It's been in all the headlines. What are you hearing?
Well, clearly the big news lately has been the release of the housing reform memos from both Treasury and HUD in response to the president's executive order. There's been a lot of pent-up demand for that. The Senate has held hearings that included Secretary Mnuchin from Treasury, Secretary Carson from HUD, and then FHFA Director Mark Calabria. The House is likely to hold hearings that parallel those in the Senate at some point this coming month in October. But clearly the content in those reports is pretty rich, lays out what I would call a roadmap rather than a blueprint. It gives a lot of options, particularly to Director Calabria. And I think we have a greater sense of the timing of what Calabria will be doing in partnership with Treasury. Like, it's pretty imminent that we're going to see an end to the net profit sweep for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And that'll take at least a partial amendment to the so-called PSPAs, preferred stock purchasing agreements that have governed the relationship between the federal government and profits from Fannie and Freddie while they've been in conservatorship. And then it's pretty clear that the next step FHFA is going to take is moving forward and determining what process they're going to use to help the GSEs rebuild capital out of as they head towards exiting conservatorship. And so whether they follow up on the prior capital rule or they propose an entirely new rule, we'll probably know about that in the next couple of months. And then they're going to move next year into other issues like the size of the housing footprint, the federal government's role. And clearly, I think importantly, Rob, the HUD plan in particular contemplates some changes to FHA. So this is not just about the GSEs, it's also about HUD and FHA. And then Congress has a role to play too, whether or not they'll take some limited steps, whether this year or maybe even next year in a lame duck session after the 2020 elections, like a government guarantee that's explicit and a wrap around MBS, maybe giving Calabria the running room to charter multiple numbers of guarantors and not just the 2 GSEs or the 3 GSEs with the Federal Home Loan Banks included as well. Things of that nature, the affordable housing piece, which is so politically volatile and important. Those are the kinds of things that Congress really does need to step in and do, but has been difficult for them to get around to doing thus far.
Yeah, speaking of Congress, the Senate and the House have overwhelmingly both passed continuing resolutions. What does that mean for the budget battle with the administration towards the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question it's a Harper partisan time in Washington, but I'm really glad you asked that question because a lot is getting done, and I think the stage is being set for more to happen. It's likely going to happen at the end of the year in a big kind of catch-all funding bill, budget and appropriations omnibus package that'll fund the government through the rest of fiscal year 2020. But the CR passed in a pretty clean fashion, less controversy, so the government's going to stay open until November 21st. Flood insurance as a program was reauthorized up until November 21st, so that gives a little more space once again, for the House and Senate to try to contemplate some longer-term reforms or a 5-year reauthorization, we would hope. But there's an awful lot that's going on otherwise. I mean, there's a lot of stage setting for terrorism risk insurance as a program to be reauthorized. That probably won't happen until next year, but important hearings are going to be held, I think, before the end of the year. I also think that it's really important for us to focus on the fact that in that end-of-the-year package, the appropriations committees in both the House and the Senate have said that FHA and HUD can have an additional $20 million for information technology upgrades. This will be the second year in a row that we're virtually assured that they're going to get that tranche of money to help improve their capacities, which are so important for our lender members as they work with FHA and the other Ginnie securitized programs. And then there's other things happening like cannabis-related legislation that could have some possible mortgage-related hooks as well that we're monitoring and looking at actively. And I guess the last thing I'd say is there's also the potential for tax legislation at the end of the year that could be hooked into that big package, so-called extenders that might impact the deductibility of mortgage insurance premiums, and then mortgage debt forgiveness.
Yeah, let's talk about the workings of MBA for a second. I know that we've embarked with an MBA Strategic Grassroots Initiative. Tell us a little bit about it and how our members can get involved.
Yeah, really, we've had a lot of members that have already gotten involved, and it's as simple as just making sure that our members are meeting with their elected officials back home, where we think that it's even more effective than what we do by proxy here on behalf of the association's membership. It buttresses that. It kind of adds value on top of that. And so we've had a couple dozen members in groups from various states and congressional districts that have met with senators and members of the House over the last couple of months, starting in August when they were home for congressional recess. We'll have some more of those meetings taking place here for the next 2 weeks while Congress, both the House and Senate, are again in recess. And so we've got about 40 meetings in total on the books. And the importance of that is just, bringing home that our members are employers and that they're helping connect people to, decent owned or rented, household space. And that, we're the lubricant, on the finance side to make that happen.
Bill, MBA's annual convention is coming up at the end of October in Austin, Texas. What can you tell us about it?
Well, like always, with so much happening in the regulatory space, you'll have the full panoply of all the regulators that matter to our members like CFPB, HUD, FHFA, there on display, making speeches, taking questions, and so a great opportunity for our members to understand how policy will impact their business operations. On the legislative side, we're happy to have Senator John Cornyn, the senior senator from Texas, the state that will be hosting us in Austin, to address the one of the opening sessions at the start of the convention as well. Cornyn's a former #2 Republican in the Senate leadership, and he's very plugged into what the schedule is and what the levers will be that will be pulled between the end of the year and into next year.
It's going to be a terrific event. We're really looking forward to it.
Oh, absolutely. It'll be great.
Appreciate you stopping by. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, as always. Happy to be here.